Dr. John Gill, Book 1, Chapter 9 of the Omniscience of God. Narrated by David Clark. Having considered each attribute of God, which belong to him as an active and operative spirit, as the life of God and his power or omnipotence, I proceed to consider such perfections which may be ascribed to him as an intelligent spirit, to which rational spirits endowed with understanding, will and affections bear some similarity. God is said to have a mind and understanding, Romans 11:34 and Isaiah 40:28, to which may be referred the attributes of knowledge and wisdom which go together, Romans 11:33. I shall begin with the first of these and prove that knowledge belongs to God, which is objected to and called in question by impious and atheistical persons, Psalm 73:11, particularly with respect to human affairs, the grounds of which doubts about it and objections to it seem to arise partly from the supposed distance of God in heaven from men on earth, and partly from the thick dark clouds which intervene between them, Job 22:12-14, and which are easily answered by observing the omnipresence of God, or his presence in all places, and that the darkness hides nothing from his all-piercing, all-penetrating eye. The darkness and the light belong to him, Psalm 139, 7-12, Jeremiah 23:23-24. Let it be further observed that in all rational creatures there is knowledge. There is much in angels, and so there was in man before the fall, both of natural, divine, and civil things. And since the fall, there is a remainder of it, notwithstanding the loss sustained by it, and there is more especially divine and spiritual knowledge in regenerate men, who are renewed in knowledge. Now, if there is knowledge in any of the creatures of God, then much more in God himself. Besides, all the knowledge that is in angels or men comes from God. He is a God of knowledge, or knowledges, of all knowledge, 1 Samuel 2:3. The source and fountain of it, therefore, must be in him in its perfections. Knowledge of all things, natural, civil, spiritual, is from him, is taught and given by him. Wherefore strong is the reasoning of the psalmist. He that teacheth man knowledge, shall he not know? Psalm 94:10. His knowledge may be inferred from his will, and the actions of it. That he has a will is most certain, and works all things after the counsel of his will, which cannot be resisted, Ephesians 1:11, Romans 9:19, and this can never be supposed to be without knowledge. It is generally said and believed of the will of man that it is determined by the last act of the understanding, and it cannot be imagined that God wills anything ignorantly and rashly. He must know what he wills and nils, and to whom he wills anything or refuses, Romans 9:15-18. And it appears from all his works, from the works of creation, the works on earth and sea, and all in them, which are ascribed to his wisdom, understanding and knowledge, and could never be made without them, Proverbs 3:19-20. The government of the world and the judgments of the last day suppose and require the same, Romans 11:33, 1 Corinthians 4:5. Without knowledge, God would not be perfectly happy, the blessed one, and blessed forever as he is. It is knowledge that gives men the preference to the brute creation, and makes them happier than they, Job 35:11. And the spiritual knowledge which good men have gives them a superior excellency and felicity to bad men, and their happiness in a future state will lie as in perfect holiness, so in perfect knowledge, or to know as they are known, 1 Corinthians 13:12. In short, Without knowledge, God would be no other than the idols of the Gentiles, who have eyes but see not, are the works of errors, and are falsehood and vanity. But the portion of Jacob is not like them. Jeremiah 10:14-16. I go on. 2. To show the extent of the knowledge of God. It reaches to all things. John 21:17, 1 John 3:20, and is therefore with great propriety called omniscience, and which the very heathens ascribe to God, and extend to the thoughts. Thales being asked whether man, doing ill, could lie hid to or be concealed from God, answered, no, nor thinking neither. And Pender says, if a man hopes that anything will be concealed from God, he is deceived. 1. God knows himself, his nature and perfections. Somewhat of this is known by creatures themselves, even by the very heathens, through the light of nature, and in the glass of the creatures, wherein God has shown it to them, even his invisible things, his eternal power and Godhead, Romans 1:19-20, and which are more clearly displayed in Christ, and redemption by him, and more evidently seen by them who are favoured with a divine revelation. And if creatures know something of God, though imperfectly, then he must know himself in the most perfect manner. And rational creatures are endowed with knowledge of themselves, of their nature, and what belongs to them, as angels may reasonably suppose to be, since even men in their fallen and imperfect state know something of themselves, of the constitution, temperament, and texture of their bodies, and of the powers and faculties of their souls, what is in them, in the innermost recesses of the mind, their thoughts, purposes, intentions, 1 Corinthians 2:11. Know thyself has been reckoned a wise maxim with philosophers, and the first step to wisdom and knowledge, and good men, illuminated by the Spirit of God, attain to the highest degree of it. And if creatures know themselves in any degree, infinitely much more must the Creator of all know himself. God knows himself in all his persons, and each person's fully known one to another. The Father knows the Son, begotten by him, and brought up with him. The Son knows the Father, in whose bosom he lay, and the Spirit knows the Father and the Son, and from whom he proceeds. And the Father and the Son know the Spirit, who is sent by them, as the Comforter. Matthew 11:27, 1 Corinthians 2:10-11. God knows the mode of each person's subsistence in the deity and paternity of the Father, the generation of the Son, and the spiration of the Holy Ghost, that these three are one, and one in three. 3 persons but one God, which is a mystery, incomprehensible by us, but inasmuch as God, who knows his own nature best, has so declared it to be, it becomes us to yield to the obedience of faith unto it. He knows his own thoughts, which are the deep things of God, and as much above us as the heavens are above the earth, and as much out of his riches, as much out of our reach. But he knows them. Jeremiah 29:11. That is his decree, purposes, designs, as he needs must, since they are purposed in himself. He knows the things he has purposed, and the exact time of the accomplishment of them, which he has reserved in his own power. 1 Ephesians 1:11, Ecclesiastes 3:1, Acts 1:7. Number 2. God knows all the creatures. There is not any creature, no, not one, that is not manifest in his sight. Hebrews 4:13. Known unto him are all his works, all that his hands has wrought. Acts 15:18. When he had finished the works of creation, he saw everything that he had made, looked over it and considered it, and pronounced it good. Genesis 1:31. And his eye sees all things in their present state and condition. He knows all things, inanimate, all that is upon the earth, herbs, grass, trees, and all in the bowels of it, and the metals and minerals, all that are in the heavens, not only the great luminaries of the sun and the moon, their in nature, motions, risings and settings, with everything belonging to them, but the stars innumerable, bringeth them out of their host by number, or them as a mighty army, and numerous, and yet, as numerous as they are, he calleth them all by names. Such a distinct and particular knowledge he has of them, and that because he hath created them, and he upholds them in being by the greatness of his might, so that not one faileth. Isaiah 40:26. He knows all the irrational creatures, the beasts of the field, the cattle on the 1,000 hills. I know, says he, all the fowls of the mountains. Psalm 50:10-11. As worthless a bird as the sparrow is, not one of them falls to the ground without the knowledge of the will of God. Matthew 10:29. He knows all the fishes of the sea, and provided one to swallow Jonah, which threw it out, and which at his order cast him on the dry land again. Jonah 1:17, 2:10. And if Adam had such knowledge of all creatures as to give them proper and suitable names, Genesis 2:19-20, and Solomon, a fallen son of his, should speak of trees from the cedars of Lebanon to the hyssops and the springs out of the walls, and of the beasts, fowl, creeping things and fishes, 1 Kings 4:33, even of their nature, properties, use and end. Can it be thought incredible that God, the creator of them, should have a distinct and perfect knowledge of all these? He knows all rational beings, as angels and men, and angels, though innumerable, being his creatures, stand before him, beholding his face, and set forth by him as ministering spirits. The elect angels, whom he knows, who must know, since he has chosen them and put them under Christ, the head of all principality and power, and confirmed them by his grace in their happy state, and who stood in his right hand and left, hearkening to his voice and ready to obey his will, and are employed by him in providential affairs, in things respecting the heirs of salvation. Yet the apostate angels, devils, are known by him, and are laid up in chains of darkness, reserved to the judgment of the great day, and are under the continual eye of God and the restraints of his providence. The questions put to these by God, Job 1:7, and by Christ, Mark 5:9, do not imply any kind of ignorance of them. The one is put to lead to a discourse concerning Job, and the other to put the greatness of the miracle wrought in casting them out. God knows all men, good and bad, all the sons of men, the inhabitants of the earth, and wherever they are, in all places and in all ages. Psalm 33:14, Proverbs 15:3. He knows their hearts, for he has fashioned them alike, and is often said to be the searcher of them. He knows the thoughts of the hearts. As his word, so is he a discerner of them. Hebrews 4:12, Psalm 139:2, which is peculiar to God, and a strong proof of his deity, of Christ, the essential word. Matthew 9:4, John 2:24 and 25, Hebrews 4:12 and 13. The evil thoughts of men, which are many and vain, Psalm 94:11, and the good thoughts of men, as he must, since they are of him and not themselves, and he takes such notice of them as to write a book of remembrance of them. 2 Corinthians 3:5, Malachi 3:16. He knows the imaginations of the thoughts of the heart, the first motions to thought, whether good or bad. Genesis 6:5, 1 Chronicles 28:9. He knows all the words of men. There is not upon their tongues or uttered by them, but he knows it altogether. Psalm 139:4. The words of wicked men, and even idle words, which must be accounted for in the day of judgment, and much more their blasphemies, oaths and curses, and all the hard speeches spoken against Christ and his people. Matthew 12:36, Jude 1:15. And the words of good men expressed in prayer and thanksgiving, and his spiritual conversation with one another. Malachi 3:16. And all the works and ways of men. Job 34:21. Their civil ones, their down sittings and uprisings, going forth and comings in. Psalm 139, 2 and 3, 121, 3 and 8, and all their sinful ways and works, which will all be brought into judgment, and for which an account must be given at the bar of God. Ecclesiastes 12:14, 2 Corinthians 5:10, as well as all the good works of God's people, who knows from what principles they spring, in what manner they are done, and with what views and for what ends. Revelation 2:2 and 19. 3. God knows all things, whatever, as well as himself and the creatures. He knows all the things possible to be done, though they are not, nor never will be done, such as have been observed, understood, under the preceding attribute. And this knowledge is what is called by the schoolmen knowledge of simple intelligence, of things that are not actually done. He knows what might be done, and in course would or should he not prevent them by interposition of his power and providence, and which he determines to do. So he knew the wickedness and treachery of the men of Keilah to David, and that if he stayed there, they would deliver him up to the hands of Saul, and therefore gave him notice of it, and that he might make his escape from them, and so prevent their giving him up, according to his determinate will. 1 Samuel 23:11-12. God knows the wickedness of some men's hearts, that they would be guilty of the most shocking crimes, and that without number, if suffered to live, and therefore he takes them away by death, and that such is the temper of some, that if they had a large share of riches, they would be so haughty and overbearing there would be no living by them, and that even some good men, if they had them, would be tempted to abuse them to their own hurt, and therefore he gives them poverty. Wherefore God knows all things that have been, are, or shall be, and which the schools call knowledge of vision, an intuitive view of all actual things, things past, present, and to come, so called not with respect to God, with whom nothing is past or future, but all present, but with respect to us and our measures of time. He knows all the former things from the beginning of the world, and which is a proof of his deity, and which a proof that the idols of the Gentiles cannot give, nor any of them. Isaiah 44, 41, 22, 43 and 9. All past transactions, at the creation, the fall of Adam, and what followed on that, the original of nations, and their settlements in the world, with various other occurrences to be met with only in the Bible, inspired by God, which, as it is the most ancient, so the truest and best history in the world. Nothing that has been can escape the knowledge of God, nor slip out of his mind and memory. Oblivion cannot be ascribed to him. Could he forget past facts, or they be lost to him? How could anything, open or secret, be brought into account at the day of judgment, as it will? Ecclesiastes 12:14. Forgetting the sins of his people, and remembering them no more, or attributed to him, after the manner of men, who, when they forgive one another, do or should forget offences. God sees and knows all things present, all things naked and open to him. He sees all at once view, all that is done, and everywhere he must, since he is present in all places, and all live and move and have their being in him. He knows all things, future, all that will be, because he has determined there shall be. It is his will that gives fruition to them, and therefore he must certainly know what he wills and shall be. And this is another proof of deity wanting in heathen gods. Isaiah 41, 22, 23, 44, 7, 46, 10. And this is what is called presence, or foreknowledge, and of which Tertullian many hundreds of years ago observed that there were as many witnesses of it as there are prophets, and I may add, as there are prophecies. For all prophecy is founded on God's foreknowledge and predetermination of things, and of this there is numerous instances in the Israelites being in a strange land 400 years, and then coming out with great substance, Genesis 15, 13, 14. of their 70 years captivity in Babylon, the deliverance from thence at the end of that time, Jeremiah 29:10, with many other things relating to that people and other nations, and prophecies of Daniel concerning the 4 monarchs, and predictions of the Old Testament concerning the incarnation of Christ, his sufferings, death, resurrection, ascension, and seasons at God's right hand. And what is in the book of Revelation but a prophecy, and so a proof of God's foreknowledge of future events, which should be in the church and the world, from the times of Christ to the end of the world. And this presence, or foreknowledge of God, is only of the effects of necessary causes, which necessarily will be unless prevented by something extraordinary, and of which men themselves may have knowledge, as these things ponderous will fall downwards, and light things move upwards, and the fire put to consumable matter will burn. But of things contingent, which is to their nature, may or may not be, and which even depend upon the wills of men, and which with respect to second causes are haps and chances, perhaps with respect to God, there is nothing causal or contingent, nothing comes to pass but what is decreed by him, what he has determined either to do himself or others, or suffer to be done. Lamentations 3:37-38. That which is chance to others is none to him. What more a chance for matters of a lot? Yet, though it is cast in the lap, and it is causal to men, how it will turn up, the whole disposing of it is of the Lord. Psalm 16:33. What more contingent then, the imaginations, thoughts, the designs of men, what they will be, and yet these are foreknown before conceived in the mind. Deuteronomy 31:21, Psalm 139:2. Or than the voluntary actions of men, yet these are foreknown and foretold by the Lord long before they are done, as the names of persons given them, and what should be done by them, as of Josiah. And he should offer the priests and burn the bones of men on the altar at Bethel. See Kings 1:13-2, 2 Kings 23:15 and 16, and Cyrus, that he should give orders for the building of the temple and the city of Jerusalem, and let the captive Jews go free without price. Isaiah 44:28 and 45:13, Ezra 1:1-3, all which were predicted of these persons by name some hundreds of years before they were born. How all this is reconcilable with the liberty of man's will is a difficulty, and therefore objected to the certain foreknowledge and decree of God. But whether this difficulty can be removed or no, the thing is not less certain. Let it be observed that God's decree do not alter or do not at all infringe the liberty of the will, nor do they put anything in it, nor lay any force upon it. They only imply a necessity of the event, but not of coercion or force on the will, nor do men feel any such force upon them, and they act as freely and with the full consent of their will, whether good men or bad men, in what they do, as if there were no foreknowledge and determination of them by God. Good men willingly do what they do, under the influence of grace, though foreordained to do it by the Lord. Ephesians 2:10, Philemon 2:13, and so do wicked men, as Judas in betraying Christ, and the Jews in crucifying him, though both were according to the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God. Luke 22:22, Acts 2:23. There is another sort of presence or foreknowledge the Scriptures speak of, on which the election of persons to eternal life is founded, and acknowledged, to which it is Romans 8:30, 1 Peter 1:2, which is not a foreknowledge of faith, holiness and good works, and perseverance therein, as causes of it, for these are the effects and fruits of election, which flow from it. No bare foreknowledge of persons, but as joined with love and affection to the objects of it, and which is not general but special. The Lord knows them that are his. 2 Timothy 2:19. Not in general, as he knows all men, but distinctly and particularly. He loves them, approves of them, and delights in them, and takes a particular care of them, whilst of others it says, I know you not. Matthew 7:23. That is, as his beloved and chosen ones. But as this belongs to the doctrine of predestination, I shall defer to that in its proper place. 3. Though enough has been said to prove the omniscience of God by the enumeration of the above things, yet this may receive further proof from the several attributes of God, as from his infinity. God is infinite, and he is unlimited and unbounded so as to space, and so omnipresent. He is unbounded as to time, and is eternal. And he is unbounded as to power, and so omnipotent, and he is unbounded as to knowledge, and so omniscient. There is no searching, no coming to the end of his understanding. From his eternity he is from everlasting to everlasting, and therefore must know everything that has been, is, or shall be. Men are but of yesterday, therefore comparatively know nothing. Science is of a large extent, and man's life but short, and he can gain but little of it.
Likewise, from the omnipresence of God,
he is everywhere, in heaven, earth, and hell, and therefore must know every creature and everything that is done there. Psalm 139:7. And it may be observed that what is said there of this attribute follows upon an account of the omniscience of God, and serves to confirm it. It may be argued from the perfection of God, if anything be wanting in his knowledge, neither that nor he himself would be perfect. If the circuit of the sun is from one end of the heaven to the other, and nothing is hid on earth from its light and heat, and hence the heathens represent it as seeing all things, when much more may be said of God, who is a sun, that he looketh to the ends of the earth, and seeth under the whole heaven. Psalm 19:6, Job 28:24. From each of the works of God, his omniscience may be inferred. He has made all things, and therefore must perfectly know them. Every artificer knows his own work, its nature, composition, parts, use, and end. God upholds all things, and is present with them, and therefore must have knowledge of them. He governs the world, orders, directs, and disposes of all things in it, provides for all his creatures, feeds them, gives them their meat in due portion, and therefore must know them all. All the deeds of men, good and evil, public and private, will be all brought into judgment by him, which to do requires omniscience. Ecclesiastes 12:14, 1 Corinthians 4:5, Revelations 2:23. 4. The manner in which God knows all things is incomprehensible by us. We can say but little of it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for us. Psalm 139:6. We can better say in what manner he does not know than in what he does. He does not know things by revelation, by instruction and communication from another, or any way by which men come to that knowledge of things from others. For shall any teach God knowledge? Or who hath taught him? Job 21:22, Isaiah 40:13 and 14. All things are known to God from eternity, when there were none in being to inform him of anything. Besides, to suppose this is not only contrary to his eternity, but is to his independency, for this would make him beholden to the dependent on another from his knowledge. Wherefore all things are of him, for him, and through him, nor is his knowledge attained by reasoning, discoursing, and inferring one thing from another, as men's is, who not only apprehends simple ideas, but joins and compounds them, and infer another thing from them. But then this implies some degree of prior ignorance, or at best imperfect knowledge, till the premise be clear, and the conclusion formed, which is not to be said of God. And this method of knowing would be contrary to the simplicity of his nature, which admits of no composition, as well as to his perfection. Nor does he know things by succession, one after another, for then it could not be said that all things are naked and open to him, only some at one time and some at another time, which would also argue ignorance of some things in one instance of another, and imperfection of knowledge, and would be contrary to his immutability, since every accession of knowledge would make an alteration in him, whereas with him there is no variableness. He sees and knows all things at once and together in one eternal view. In word, he knows all things in himself, in his own essence and nature. He knows all things possible in his power, and all that he wills to do in his will, and all creatures in himself as the first cause of them, and whose vast and eternal mind are all the original ideas of them, so that the knowledge of God is essential to him. It is his nature and essence, and therefore is incommunicable to a creature, and even to the human nature of Christ, which, though united to his divine person, that is omniscient, yet does not thereby become omniscient. Though the human soul of Christ may know more than the soul of any man, yet not everything. Mark 13:32. And knowledge of God is also infinite. Psalm 147:5. He knows himself, that is infinite, which he could not unless his knowledge was infinite. For it is impossible, as a Jewish writer observed, that he should know what is perfectly infinite, if his knowledge was not perfectly infinite. For what is finite can never comprehend that which is infinite, and he knows all things ad infinitum. There is no searching of his knowledge. It is perfect, and nothing can be added to it. Job 36:4. And it is not conjectural, but certain, depending on his will. He knew from all eternity, most certainly, all the things that would be, that are, because he determined they should be, and his will cannot be frustrated, nor his power resisted. Job 42, verse 2.